Turtle parked the car across the street, throat a little dry. She got out, shoving her phone into her pocket as she made her way to the front door. She knocked, waiting a couple moments before she could hear feet walk behind the door. She smiled when Brian opened it, him waving her in quickly. She walked in, looking around at the small house. It was nice, not too bad for someone who just moved to get away from his parents, she guessed. She felt herself being turned around though, Brian's lips on hers, and she blinked. She didn't waste time though, kissing him back with a small smile on her lips. Turtle thought about why she was here and how she debated him coming. Yeah, she owed him a lot for all the work he did for her on the server, but this really the way she wanted to pay? Not that she minded him wanting her like this. Who wouldn't? Brian was the most lusted over guy in the DMG community, so wasn't she lucky to even have this chance? But she still couldn't help feel a little dirty, and like Abdicate would attempt to murder her. Best to let Brian handle that one though. Hey, Turtle mumbled breathlessly, and Brian chuckled. Nice place. Thanks, Turtle Dove. Do you want anything before we start? Brian asked, and Turtle shook her head. She was good, really too nervous to have food at this point. Okay, cool, go to my bedroom, strip. Oh, it's down the hallway on the right, Brian said, pushing her in that direction. Turtle cleared her throat, walking down the hallway, entering the only door on her right. She looked around, seeing a nice king-size bed and a huge dresser. There was also a door, probably to the bathroom, and a closet on the side. Turtle started to get undressed, taking off her jeans and t-shirt. She put it on a pile in the corner, unclasping her bra and throwing it in the pile. She moved next to slowly taking off her panties, feeling bare, which added to the nervous feeling. She could hear Brian walk in and quickly turned around. He smirked, looking over her, and she wiggled around some from the gaze. She thought about how she loved his confidence. Unlike her, he showed no signs of nervousness. Had he done this before? She wondered. What's next? Turtle asked softly, chewing on her bottom lip. Brian didn't say anything, only walking over to his closet. She waited with her foot tapping on the floor, wondering what was inside. Brian pulled out a collar and panties and turned around to give them to her. Put these on, Brian stated simply, and Turtle nodded. She put on the panties, but couldn't help but notice them being lacy and crotchless. She liked them though, they fit well. She pushed her long ginger hair over her shoulder, putting on the collar that was a little tight though. It felt good. Turtle felt Brian take out her ponytail though, and she blinked. I want your hair down, it seems better this way, Brian said, fingers going through her hair. She couldn't say the same, Turtle thought, eyeing his short brown hair, but that doesn't matter. He was still pretty cute. She nodded, biting on her bottom lip softly as Brian guided her to the bed. He sat her down, going back over to the closet and pulling out a few toys. He had rope in one hand, which he toyed with while speaking. Now, we should probably have a safe word. We don't need one, I trust you, Brian, she told him, and he nodded firmly. He pushed her down, tying her hands to the bed, and she watched as he hovered over her. Turtle chewed on her bottom lip, wondering what was going to happen first. Brian unzipped his pants, and Turtle noticed that he was already hard. She sighed, biting into her bottom lip some more as he pulled his cock out, coming over and pushing it into her mouth. Turtle bobbed her head quickly, taking as much as she could into her mouth as she whined softly. He had one hand in her hair, the other at his side. Turtle licked under his cock, bobbing her head quickly as he pushed more of his member inside of her mouth. He groaned, tilting his head back as he bucked his hips. She choked a little, but he didn't stop. She loosened her jaw a little, trying to get more of him inside of her mouth. After a moment, he pulled his cock out of her mouth, and she gasped softly with wide eyes. My good little turtle dove, Brian mumbled, going over, taking out one of the vibrators and turning it on. Since she was so good, you can have a little reward. Brian smirked and pushed it against Turtle's clit. She gasped, heels of her feet sinking into the bed as she tilted her head into the side of the pillow. She pushed her hips down in pure bliss as she moaned out Brian's name. He could feel his eyes on her, probably a smirk on his face, as well as he watched her squirm on the bed. Turtle breathed out hard, chest rising and falling as she felt herself get close already. She choked out a warning, and Brian quickly pulled the vibrator off of her. She whined, pouting as she watched him shut it off. Her legs were shaking a little, hair already a mess, but she did not care at all. You think I'd let you come that easy? No. You're coming with my dick inside of you, Brian declared, and Turtle nodded. Brian was going to take her virginity. So what should I do to you, Brian sighed, and Turtle could hear the amusement in his voice. She stayed quiet, not knowing how to answer. Brian came over, slapping her thigh, and she gasped, bolting up. I asked you a question, didn't I, Turtle Dove? He hummed, and she cleared her throat. I don't know, Brian. Call me sir, he corrected her, and she nodded quickly. Sir, I didn't know. Turtle mumbled softly, Jesus, thinking quickly. She had to come up with something, but everything that she had wanted Brian to do to escape her mind. Well, it seems like I'm going to have to punish you then, aren't I? Brian smirked, and Turtle bit her bottom lip softly. Jesus, don't you guys just love me? I think you like that though, don't you? He smirked, and she let out a soft please. Brian untied her from the bed slowly and soon flipped her over in his lap. I want you to count out loud, and if you mess up, we'll just have to start over. Yes, sir, Turtle mumbled, and waited for the first strike of his hand. She felt it come down quickly, and she mowed out a 1. It felt so nice, his strong hand against her ass, and she wished he had done it sooner. She whimpered out a 2 the next time, breathing slightly hard as he slapped her again and again. Brian slapped again, and she gasped, choking back the number. Turtle lost her place. Brian chuckled darkly at the silence. Start over, we are going to 20, Brian informed Turtle, and she guessed that the number went up from last time. Brian spanked her, and she mumbled a soft 1, closing her eyes and focused on the pleasure. Turtle was up to 10, and she could feel the sting every time Brian spanked her. And this is what she wanted, right? She moaned, feeling his hard cock pressing against her thigh. Turtle wanted him to fuck her so badly. She never wanted another human to fuck her so badly, and if Brian would hurry up, maybe she could actually lose her virginity. 19, Turtle cried out softly, and Brian rubbed over her slowly before slapping 1 more. 20, she breathed out, blinking back tears. Brian smiled, rubbing her booty softly. Good, Turtle Dove, Brian murmured. So very good. She felt a small kiss on her shoulder. Turtle sighed out shakily, feeling him push her up. Her ass hurt sitting on the bed, but she stayed there, watching as Brian walked over to his drawer. She watched him pull out a condom and lube as she swallowed down her nervousness, but she stayed there, watching as Brian walked over to his drawer. She watched him pull out a condom and lube as she swallowed down her nervousness. She waited as he came over, and he pushed her against the pillow. Turtle had her legs spread, waiting for Brian to lube himself up. Instead, his head disappeared between her legs. He choked loudly. Brian, she whimpered, feeling his tongue press against her clit. She totally forgot about the servo, but it seemed Brian didn't care at the moment. He didn't even waste any time, and Turtle guessed that he was on the edge and didn't want to tease anymore. He wasn't complaining. Turtle gasped, tilting her head back as his tongue entered her, his fingers gripping her thigh so hard that they were about to leave marks for sure. She breathed out heavily, feeling him push his face even closer to her warm, if that was possible. Turtle rolled her hips, and Brian let out a moan which sent vibrations straight through Turtle and her spine. Shit, fuck Brian. She moaned loudly, eyes closed as her mouth dropped. Brian's tongue was pure magic, and she could already feel her orgasm coming. Turtle pulled at Brian's shirt he was still wearing though, knowing he didn't want her to come, and he got the message. Brian leaned up and kissed her so that she was able to taste herself, though she didn't mind. He kissed back quietly, feeling Brian pull her closer, his cock brushing up against her thigh. He breathed out through her nose, gripping his shirt as she felt 2 fingers enter her. She gasped in his mouth, his tongue invading, and let her hips roll against the friction of his fingers. You're so tight, he mumbled, fingering her quicker. That's not even a word. She whimpered, barely being able to kiss Brian back as she felt a 3rd finger insert her. Turtle groaned, whispering a fuck as Brian let her adjust. She sighed, feeling the ex-moment's kiss along your jaw and nip at her neck. She breathed out, head tipping back as Brian fingered her harder, feeling herself getting wetter by the minute. I think you're ready, Brian mumbled on her neck, kissing it before his fingers left her pussy. She blinked, her eyes open, breathing hard as Brian put on the condom. He kept eye contact with her the entire time, and could feel herself get very nervous quickly. Brian stopped and stared at her. She blinked at him before he rubbed her in her thigh. Hey, you okay, Turtle Dove? He asked softly, voice sweet. She nodded quickly. Nervous? She nodded again. Brian leaned down, kissing her softly, sincerely. I don't want to do this if you don't want to, he said, and she cleared her throat. No, I want to, Turtle said quickly, not being able to stand the thought of ending now. You sure? Brian asked one more time, sliding the rest of the condom back on. Turtle could see he really didn't want to end this either. More than anything, she whispered, and Brian grinned widely. He kissed her before reaching over for the lube, making sure he was covered nicely. Turtle watched him, and he came close, holding onto her thighs. She felt the head press against her, and she swallowed thickly. She kissed her again, pushing in slowly as she focused on his lips. It wasn't as bad as she had thought it was going to be actually, but there was a slight burn that felt dull at her spine. She whimpered, and he stopped almost all the way in. You okay, Turtle Dove? Brian asked softly before Turtle nodded quickly. Okay, I'm almost all the way in, he told her, rubbing her thigh as he continued to push in. She sighed out hard, Brian staying still until she said something. It took a moment, but she nodded, both of their foreheads together as he slowly rocked his hips. She gasped softly, watching him as he continued, a slight smile on his lips. Good, keep going, Turtle begged softly, feeling the burning feeling at her spine disappearing. She moaned out, eyes fluttering closed as Brian continued, and it wasn't long before he picked up his pace. Turtle whimpered, cursing under her breath as she felt how nice it was to have Brian inside of her. Faster, she whispered, and he blinked, giving her a look. Faster, Turtle growled, and Brian's eyes looked darker at the command. Brian let his hips buck in hers, causing her to moan, scratching his back as she kept fucking her at a faster pace. Fucking hell, Lily, you're dark. God, shit, you're so tight, he whispered softly, eyes closed and mouth pressed against her neck as his hips snapped. She cried out, fingers gripping his hair as she felt him almost pull all the way out. She cried out again, though, feeling him slam back into her. Shit, Brian, Turtle moaned. Brian was so much better in bed than she had ever expected. She loved it, though. She loved the way Brian was rough and how it slightly hurt every time he did slam in. Fuck, she couldn't even get enough of him, and he couldn't get enough of her. Turtle could feel herself getting close to coming, and she panted as Brian's hips pressed against hers over and over. Her eyes shut tight, biting on her bottom lip hard, drawing blood on accident. She pushed through it, body shaking as Brian rammed into her. Beep beep. Right there, she told him, and he nodded. Brian fucked her harshly each time. More and more she felt it like she was breaking. Her orgasm hit her suddenly and she cried out, yelling out Brian's name as he kept fucking her through it. Her thighs shook and it seemed like she couldn't breathe for a moment. Brian groaned her nickname, and he must have came because he slowed to a stop. He was still shaking, eyes wide and mouth dropped open. He kissed her neck softly, rubbing her stomach as he pulled out. He pulled off the condom, throwing it in the trash bin. Not being able to control herself, she let out a sound of pleasure from her throat. Hey, Brian murmured, covering them both as he held her. She sighed out, but fuck. She could still feel Brian inside of her. He kissed the top of her head, stroking her back lovingly. You okay? He asked, a slight tone of amusement in his voice. Turtle nodded, feeling more than sleepy, curling into Brian. That was fucking great, she moaned. And she let out a loud laugh. You know, like a fucking witch cackle. Turtle looked up at Brian, who had a huge smile on his face as he brushed back her bangs. I mean, they just banged, but still. She leaned up to kiss him quickly, and to her pleasure, he kissed back. I'm glad you were my first, she admitted, and Brian smiled against her lips. Glad to be of service, my turtle dove. Brian mumbled, wrapping his arms around her and holding her there tightly. Turtle closed her eyes and thought about how much she enjoyed this, about how much she wanted to do it again. Maybe if she continued to please him, he'd keep her. She didn't expect a marriage proposal or anything like that, but just maybe he'd keep loving her.